The beacon pulsed again, a slow heartbeat echoing through the water, and every alien ship in the fleet felt the vibration run through its hull. It was not just a signal anymore. It felt alive, as if the ocean itself carried the sound into their bones. The crew shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between consoles and the dark water outside. The admiral kept his face calm, but his claws tapped against the metal rail in a restless rhythm. He had seen many tricks in war, but none that felt like this. Human voice speaking across centuries was no simple trick. It was a message left with purpose, a warning waiting to be heard. He ordered a deep scan of the area, determined to rip away the mystery. The scanners stretched into the trench, mapping layer after layer of stone and sand. At first, they saw nothing unusual, only jagged ridges and the remains of long-dead sea life. But then, the readings began to change. Beneath the rubble and coral, there were straight lines, too perfect to be natural, shapes hidden by centuries of growth. The fleet adjusted their angle, sending stronger beams into the abyss. The image became clearer. Walls, arches, towers half broken, but still standing. City, a human city lying on the ocean floor, deeper than any alien record had ever shown. The silence on the bridge was heavy. No one had expected this. The admiral's jaw tightened. He remembered the old war, the battles fought across the skies and continents of Earth. Humans had fought stubbornly. But in the end, their defenses had collapsed. Entire regions were burned, their cities shattered, their armies broken. According to the history of his kind, the survivors were scattered, weak, and leaderless. Yet here was proof that the story was not complete. While the aliens had watched the skies, humans had vanished beneath the sea, building something vast and secret, a place hidden from alien eyes. The admiral felt his certainty crack. What else had the humans built that his kind had never seen? The fleet moved closer, engines humming until the ruins lay just beneath their shadows. Strange towers jutted up through the sand, some leaning, some still straight, their tops covered in shells and seaweed. Lights flickered faintly among them, as if the city still breathed. The crew watched with wide eyes. No human city should have survived this long underwater, not with power still burning. Yet the readings were clear. Energy flowed through the ruins, faint but steady, like veins carrying blood. Someone had designed this place to last forever. Without warning, the beacon spoke again. The voice was different now, sharper, clearer, as if the distance of time no longer mattered. "Stand where you do not belong," it said, the sound carrying through every alien ship at once. The crew flinched. The admiral raised his head defiantly, though the voice unsettled him more than he admitted. It felt as though whoever had spoken was not gone. It felt as though they were watching, waiting for the fleet to make its move. He ordered the beacon destroyed, unwilling to let a human ghost rattle his soldiers. The cannons of the nearest ship powered up, glowing bright beneath the waves. But before the shot could fire, the ocean floor shifted. The sand erupted in clouds, and the scanner screamed with warnings. Something vast was buried beneath the city. Shapes unfolded, mechanical, and living at once, rising like sleeping giants, awakened by the touch of light. The alien crews panicked, voices shouting across the comms. The admiral barked orders for calm, but even he stared in shock as enormous constructs pushed themselves free from the seabed. They were not simple machines. Their surfaces were plated with bone and steel, grown together in ways the aliens could not understand. Their eyes glowed blue, the same color as the beacon, and they moved with purpose. The human voice returned, stronger than before. "You poisoned our skies. You burned our lands, but you forgot the ocean." Here we waited. The words rang like a curse, like the ocean itself spoke for humanity. The alien fleet formed a line, weapons aiming, but doubt ran through their hearts. The ruins around them were no longer silent. Light spread through the towers, lines of energy crawling like veins of fire. The forgotten city was waking. The admiral clenched his fists and refused to retreat. He told his crew that these were only relics, old machines left behind by desperate humans, nothing more. He ordered the fleet to advance into the ruins too. Push through, and uncover every secret. His pride would not allow him to believe humans had survived with such power. The ships moved into formation, sliding between the towers of the drowned city. The water was filled with shadows now, shifting shapes that kept just out of reach, watching. Every sound echoed too loudly. Every movement felt heavy. As the fleet pushed deeper, the ruins opened into a wide plaza. At the center stood a colossal structure, taller than the rest, its top shaped like a crown of steel and coral. The beacon's light pulsed from within it, and for a brief moment, the admiral felt a chill run through his chest. The building did not feel abandoned. It felt like a throne. He wanted to believe it was empty, that only machines stirred here. But when the voice spoke again, it was not just a message. It addressed them directly, as if it had been waiting for this meeting. Admiral, it said, using his title, the one he had never spoken aloud in human tongue. His eyes widened. His crew froze. The city knew who he was. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then faintly from the depths of the crown-like tower, new lights flickered. They were not blue like the beacon. They were red, sharp and dangerous, burning through the water like eyes opening after a long sleep. The ocean trembled, and for the first time the admiral felt he might have stepped into a trap far larger than any war he had ever fought. The forgotten beacon was not only a warning, it was a key, and something old had just been unlocked. The alien fleet moved into the ruins with caution, their ships gliding between towers of stone and metal that leaned like the ribs of a giant skeleton. The water was heavy, pressing against their hulls, as if the ocean itself tried to slow them down. The admiral stood tall, his eyes locked on the glowing crown-shaped tower at the center of the drowned city. He believed the humans had left machines to scare them, nothing more. He believed his kind's firepower would tear through anything hidden here. Yet deep in his chest, something uneasy coiled like a shadow. The human voice still rang in his head, whispering from the beacon. The ocean remembers. It was not a warning he could icily dismiss. The fleet spread wider, sending scouts into the ruins. Their scanners lit up with countless shapes darting around them, too small to target, too fast to follow. At first, the aliens thought it was fish stirred from their homes, but the movements were too precise. The shapes were circling them, weaving patterns through the currents. The crews grew restless, weapons ready, eyes sharp for an ambush. Then one of the forward ships reported contact. The comms filled with static, then with screams, then silence. On the admiral's monitor, the image of the ship twisted as something tore through its hull. A cloud of bubbles exploded outward, and then there was nothing left but broken pieces sinking into the trench. The admiral's claws gripped the rail tighter. It had begun. The alien fleet fired into the ruins. Beams of energy slicing through stone and sand, turning the seabed into boiling glass. Entire towers collapsed under their assault, but the shadows only multiplied. More scouts disappeared, cut apart in seconds. Strange vibrations shook the water, disorienting sensors, making it impossible to track targets. The admiral barked orders for his fleet to regroup, but before they could, the currents shifted sharply. Waves slammed against their hulls from all sides, pushing them apart like toys in a child's hand. Warnings filled the air hull: stress, pressure spikes, breaches in lower decks. Something was twisting the ocean around them. Then the traps revealed themselves. From the ruins, massive constructs unfolded, shaped like sea creatures, but armored in steel and bone. One looked like a serpent with blades for fins, another like a manta with wings lined with torpedoes. They swam with terrifying speed, attacking in coordinated strikes. Alien firepower hit them, but instead of breaking apart, their bodies split into smaller drones, each piece continuing the attack. The crews shouted in panic as their ships were swarmed, hulls cracking under the relentless strikes. The admirals, second-in-command, screamed that they had walked into a kill zone. The admiral silenced him with a glare, but he knew it was true. Every move the aliens made was answered by the ocean itself. Mines disguised as coral exploded under their ships, tearing holes through decks. Entire flocks of razor-finned constructs darted in and out, cutting through engines with surgical precision. Even the sea life seemed unnatural. Sharks with metal teeth slammed into holes, their bodies wrapped with explosives that ignited upon impact. Whales larger than any recorded rose from the depths, their backs covered with glowing runes, releasing sonic blasts that shook the alien fleet until their weapons shut down. It was as if the humans had not only built machines, but had remade the ocean into a weapon of endless traps. The admiral refused to retreat. Pride burned in him like fire. He ordered the flagship to push through toward the glowing tower. If they could destroy the source, perhaps the traps would fall silent. The flagship surged forward, blasting apart ruins in its path, but the water thickened, resisting every move. A massive shadow passed beneath it, so large it covered the ship in darkness. The crew froze, eyes wide as the scanner screamed. Something ancient was down there, something bigger than anything they had prepared for. The admiral shouted for weapons to fire, but before the flagship could release its energy, the shadow moved. The water split, and from the abyss rose the largest human construct yet. It was not shaped like any creature the aliens knew. It was a fortress, a ship grown from steel and coral, its surface glowing with the same blue light as the beacon. It's as if they were eyes burned through the water, locking on the admiral's ship. The alien fleet fired in panic, beams crashing against its surface. But the blasts bent away, absorbed by shields woven into the very water. The admiral roared, demanding his fleet hold formation, but they were already breaking apart. Fear spread faster than his commands. Crews abandoned order, firing wildly, retreating into the ruins, trying to escape the traps that closed tighter with every passing second. The fortress opened its side, and swarms of human vessels poured out, sleek submarines with glowing hulls. They moved with perfect coordination, slipping through alien defenses, striking engines and weapons with deadly accuracy. The admiral slammed his fist into the rail, his voice shaking as he ordered a full retreat. But it was too late. The ocean around them was sealed. The trenches behind them erupted, walls of stone collapsing to block their path. The waters rose higher, currents circling them like chains. The trap was complete. As the fortress advanced, the human voice returned, stronger now, carrying the weight of centuries. You should never have come back. The words cut through the admiral's pride, slicing deeper than any weapon. He stared at the fortress, at the fleet of human vessels, at the endless traps that turned the ocean against him, and for the first time, he realized he was not the predator here. He was prey caught in a cage that had been waiting for him all along. The trap of the depths had closed, and it belonged to the humans. The ocean was no longer quiet. The ruins shook as deep tremors rolled through the water, and the alien fleet tried to hold their formation. Strange currents twisted around their ships, pulling them off balance as though the sea itself wanted them gone. Lights burned across the drowned city, and the glowing towers illuminated shadows rising from the trench below. The aliens had seen many enemies in the stars, but nothing like what was coming. At first it looked like the ocean was boiling. Then, through the clouds of silt, enormous shapes appeared. Sleek vessels broke free from the abyss, covered in dark armor that looked alive, their surfaces rippling like scales. These were not the fragile submarines the aliens had once mocked. These were warships born of water, designed for silence, speed, and destruction. The humans had returned, and they had built an ocean fleet of their own. The first human vessel surfaced with a low hum, its hull shining faintly with a blue glow that matched the beacon. Water poured from its sides, revealing long fins that shifted like wings. The aliens raised their weapons at once, but the ship moved before they could fire. It slid through the water like a predator, circling, its engines making no sound. More followed, rising from the trench in perfect formation, their eyes burning bright in the dark. The admiral of the alien fleet felt his chest tighten. This was not possible. Humans were never meant to master the sea in this way. Yet here they were, hundreds of ships where there should have been none. A signal crackled across the alien comms. Cutting through their own encrypted systems was not distortion this time, but a clear voice, a human voice filled with sharp calm. You took the sky. We took what you could never control. The words echoed in every alien ship, freezing the crews where they stood. Admiral's jaw clenched, and his eyes narrowed. He shouted for the fleet to fire, but before the order could spread, the ocean itself moved. A massive wave slammed against the alien vessels, not from wind or storm, but from the motion of the human ships. Their engines churned the water into violent currents, and several alien ships tipped sideways, their weapons firing wild into the ruins. Then the battle began. The human fleet struck with precision, their torpedoes streaking through the water like lightning bolts. But they were not ordinary weapons. Each one split open to release clouds of glowing particles that swarmed toward the alien hulls, eating into the metal like acid. Panic filled the alien cums as their armor failed against weapons they did not understand. The admiral roared for counterattack, and the alien ships unleashed beams of energy into the sea. The water boiled around them, currents ripping apart coral and stone, but the human vessels moved like ghosts. Their designs allowed them to vanish into the deep, reappearing in blind spots and striking again. The alien fleet was strong, built for domination across planets and skies, but the sea was not their home. Every movement was slower, every shot less precise. The humans knew it. They used the ocean as their weapon, pushing waves, pressure, and darkness against the invaders. Creatures swam alongside them, massive shapes with armored hides and glowing eyes, bioengineered guardians of the abyss. One of the alien ships fired directly at a human vessel, striking it head-on, but instead of breaking apart, the ship's hull rippled and reformed as though it were alive. The aliens watched in horror as the damaged ship turned and released. A swarm of drones shaped like small predators, each with jaws that locked onto hulls and tore through steel. The admiral forced himself to stand tall, his pride refusing to bend. He barked orders, trying to rally his fleet, but even his voice shook with hidden rage. These humans were not the weak survivors he remembered. They had changed in silence, evolved where no eye could see them, preparing for this moment. His sensors, lit with warnings from all sides, and still more human vessels surfaced from the abyss. The numbers were against him now. The admiral realized too late that he had underestimated them. The ocean did not belong to his fleet, it belonged to the humans who had waited in the dark. As the clash raged on, a new presence appeared. The largest human warship rose from the trench, dwarfing even the alien flagship. Surface glowed with shifting colors, blue fading into green, green burning into white. Its hull was lined with strange patterns, as if the sea itself had carved symbols into its skin. The voice returned, louder now, resonating through the water, through every heart that heard it. This is not your world. Leave the ocean, or drown in it. For the first time, the alien crews faltered. Their weapons lowered, their eyes wide with disbelief. It was not only the threat of destruction that held them, but the weight of the voice itself. It carried centuries of anger, centuries of silence. Turned into strength, the admiral refused to yield. He shouted for the fleet to stand firm, but his words no longer carried power. His soldiers looked around them and saw the truth. The sea was alive with human presence, with ships, with creatures, with lights. The ruins were not ruins anymore. They were part of a living network, a hidden empire that had waited beneath the waves. The humans had not been defeated long ago. They had been building, shaping, and preparing. Now, as the waves slammed harder against the alien ships and the abyss glowed with human fire, the truth was clear. Humanity had risen again, not from the land, not from the sky, but from the abyss. The sea was no longer calm water, but a battlefield alive with light and fury. The alien fleet had always ruled the skies with fire and precision, but here in the ocean they were clumsy beasts, thrashing in the wrong element. Their weapons burned, bright beams cutting through the water, boiling pockets of sea into clouds of steam, yet their targets kept vanishing. Human warships moved like shadows, darting from one current to another, striking and disappearing before the aliens could respond. The admiral shouted orders with iron in his voice, forcing his soldiers to focus, but panic had already slipped through the ranks. Every warning alarm, every sudden tremor of water made them flinch. They had thought themselves the hunters, but the ocean turned them into prey. From the depths, human torpedoes rushed upward, slicing through alien formations. Some torpedoes burst into storms of spinning blades, shredding anything in their path. Others cracked open to release swarms of small machines shaped like fish, each one attaching to alien holes and drilling inside until explosions ripped them apart. Alien ships rocked with violent shockwaves, their crews screaming as water forced its way inside ruptured compartments. For every alien vessel that fired, 2 were crippled by strange weapons they could not counter. It was not just firepower, but the ocean itself that fought for humanity. Pressure shifted suddenly, crushing weaker ships. Waves slammed against their hulls with unnatural force. Creatures with glowing eyes and teeth of steel swam alongside the human fleet. Tearing into alien armor with furious strength, the sea had become an army. The admiral stood on his bridge, gripping the rail with trembling claws. He had never known fear like this, not even in the greatest wars. The humans should not have had this power. They should have been broken long ago, scattered, forgotten. Yet here they were, their vengeance burning through the abyss. He refused to accept defeat, refused to believe that a species once crawling in the dirt could rise to face his fleet. He ordered the flagship to push forward, to break through the human formation. The massive ship surged, engines screaming, energy cannons firing in every direction. For a moment, it looked unstoppable, blasting human warships aside, cutting through them with brutal power. Then the ocean itself turned against it. Currents slammed into the flagship from all sides, spinning it off balance. From below, enormous chains of light wrapped around its hull, rising from the ruins like glowing tentacles. The crew tried to cut them, but every time they sliced one apart, another formed thicker and brighter. Human ships swarmed in, striking. With precision, each hit chipping away at the flagship's defenses. The admiral roared in rage, his voice shaking the walls. But it did not stop the sea from dragging his pride deeper into the fight. Everywhere across the battlefield, alien ships were falling. Some tried to rise to the surface, to escape into the skies, but storms rolled in above the waves, lightning striking the moment they broke through. Others sank, pulled into the trenches, swallowed whole by shadows waiting below. The human fleet fought without mercy, but it was not mindless slaughter. Every strike was measured, every move planned, as though they had studied alien fleets for centuries and built their war around them. It was not just a battle, it was a lesson. The aliens had believed themselves untouchable, but the humans had turned the ocean into a weapon no empire could command. The admiral's second in command rushed to him, scales pale with fear. He begged for retreat, for escape before all was lost. But the admiral's pride would not bend. He lifted his chin and declared that their fleet would fight until the last ship sank. He would not give humans the victory of seeing him run. His words carried fire, but his soldiers' eyes showed only despair. They knew the truth. This ocean war could not be won. The admiral might cling to pride, but the sea had already claimed them. Amid the chaos, the largest human ship moved forward, its glowing pattern shifting like waves across its hull. It aimed directly at the alien flagship, and the water seemed to bend around it as though the ocean cleared a path. Silence fell for a moment, broken only by the sound of creaking steel and boiling water. Then a voice filled the deep, not through speakers, not through machines, but through the water itself, vibrating in every bone. Your time beneath these waves is over. The alien fleet faltered at those words, and even the admiral felt the weight of them crush against his chest. He tried to shout back, to claim the ocean with his authority, but the voice drowned his words. The human ship opened fire, unleashing a storm of energy that ripped through the sea like thunder. The flagship shuddered violently, its shields cracking under the assault. Human vessels swarmed around it, striking again and again, while creatures of steel and flesh tore at its sides. The admiral ordered full counterattack, but his commands were lost in the chaos. His ship was bleeding, his fleet collapsing. The ocean offered him no mercy. In the distance, alien ships began to scatter, breaking formation in desperation. Some tried to hide in trenches, others fled toward the surface, but none escaped unnoticed. Human vessels hunted them with precision, striking each one down like predators chasing wounded prey. The battlefield that had begun with confidence and pride now reeked of defeat and despair. Alien fire dimmed, drowned out by the fury of the ocean, and all around them, the humans closed in. Unstoppable. The Admiral stared at the glowing human ship, its lights reflecting in his eyes. He finally understood. This was not a sudden rebellion, not a desperate attempt to survive. This war had been prepared long ago. While his kind believed the humans broken, they had been waiting in silence, turning the ocean into their kingdom, into their weapon. And now, the drowned war was theirs. The ocean battlefield was silent now, but it was not peace. Silence came because the alien fleet no longer had strength to fight. Their ships were broken, drifting like corpses in the waves, their fire gone, their pride drowned. Smoke and bubbles rose from the wrecks, carrying the last breath of their soldiers into the dark. Only the flagship still stood, though its hull was scarred and bleeding light into the water. The Admiral remained on the bridge, claws shaking, pride still burning in his chest, but even he could not deny what his eyes saw. The humans had won. The ocean belonged to them. He pressed his hand against the glass and looked out, searching for some sign that this was a nightmare. But all he saw were shadows moving through the water, human ships circling with calm patience, like predators waiting for the final strike. The largest human vessel approached, its glow cutting through the deep like a rising sun. The water bent around it, waves forming even in the depths, as if the ocean itself pushed it forward. The Admiral felt small for the first time in his life, a creature standing before something greater than his understanding. His crew looked to him with hollow eyes, waiting for an order, but there was nothing left to give. Their weapons were ruined, their shields broken, their fleet scattered. They were survivors only because the humans had not yet decided to end them. A voice rose again, the same one that had haunted them since the beacon spoke. It filled every corner of the ship, heavy with centuries of rage. You poisoned our seas. You thought us broken. You thought us gone, but we waited. And now we surface. The Admiral's heart pounded as the words pressed into him like a blade. He wanted to scream defiance, to curse the humans for their arrogance, but his throat locked. For all his pride, for all the power his fleet once held, he knew this was the end of their dominance. The humans had turned silence into strength, had turned the abyss into a kingdom. The Admiral's second-in-command fell to his knees, begging for mercy, but the voice did not answer. Instead, the human warship opened its side, and shapes emerged from within. They were not machines, not entirely. Figures stepped into the water, armored in plates that glowed faintly, their eyes bright and fearless. They swam through the currents with ease, moving as if the sea itself obeyed them. These were human soldiers, but not as the Admiral remembered. They did not wear fragile suits or carry clumsy weapons. They wore the ocean-like skin. The soldiers reached the alien flagship and began to climb aboard, slipping through breaches in the hull like shadows. Screams rose inside the ship as humans moved through the corridors, striking with silent precision. The Admiral gripped his weapon, ready to make a final stand. But deep down, he knew it was useless. The soldiers were already falling one by one, and the humans were unstoppable. He looked back toward the glowing ship outside, the source of the voice, and realized that this was more than battle, it was judgment. This was the revenge humans had promised long ago. The bridge doors burst open, and 3 armored figures entered. Water dripped from their suits, yet they stood tall as if they breathed it. The Admiral raised his weapon and roared, firing into them, but the shots bent away as if the water itself deflected them. One soldier stepped forward and ripped the weapon from his claws with effortless strength. Another pressed him back against the glass, pinning him with crushing force. The leader of the 3 leaned close, and though their helmet hid their face, the Admiral could feel the human gaze burning through him. The voice that had haunted the fleet now spoke from this soldier's lips, steady and final. Your fleet dies here. Your empire ends here. The ocean does not forgive. The first time the Admiral felt the weight of defeat press fully into him. His pride shattered, and he closed his eyes. He had come to this planet to erase a people he thought were weak. But instead, he had awakened their vengeance. He had wanted revenge for his kind's old losses, but now he understood the truth. This war was never his to win. The humans had. Carried the memory of every crime, every poisoned sea, every burned shore, and they had forged their answer in silence. They had waited beneath the waves until the day they could rise. And now, that day had come. Outside, the battlefield was still, broken only by the soft glow of human ships drifting between the wrecks. The water was filled with debris, the remains of an empire that had thought itself eternal. Slowly, the human fleet began to ascend, their lights rising toward the surface. They were not fleeing the depths, not returning to hide. They were claiming the ocean as their own. When the first ships broke through the waves, the world above saw their glow and felt the waves slam against distant shores. Humanity had surfaced, not as victims, but as rulers. The admiral's dying thoughts faded as his flagship groaned under the pressure, cracking apart while human soldiers stood above him, silent and merciless. The last thing he heard was the human commander's voice carried through the water like thunder. "We are not done." The ocean roared with those words, as if the sea itself agreed. And when the human fleet rose fully into the storm above, their ships gleaming like living titans, the universe would soon learn that Earth's revenge had only just begun. The ocean was calm at first, stretching like an endless sheet of silver under the faint light of two moons. Waves rolled in silence, soft and harmless, but something heavy stirred far beneath. The deep water began to shiver as if a giant heartbeat was pulsing under the seafloor. Then, with a roar that split the night, steel forms broke through the surface. One after another, massive alien ships rose from the depths, lifting walls of water into the air. They did not belong to Earth, yet they had chosen its oceans as the place to return. This was not their first time here. Long ago, they had left, with unfinished business. Tonight, they had come back to settle an old revenge. The alien fleet spread across the horizon, their black holes gleaming with wetness. Their weapons hummed with power, and strange lights flickered across their sides. The admiral of the fleet stood on the bridge of the largest ship, his tall frame covered in layered armor that seemed grown rather than built. His eyes scanned the dark water with cold certainty. To him, the humans were nothing more than a forgotten species, fragile and simple. Their time of resistance had ended centuries ago, or so he believed. He had come to erase whatever trace remained, to make sure no human legacy could stand against his kind again. The fleet moved slowly, searching. Sensors stretched across the water, reading every shadow, every current. The deep was scanned for heat, for movement, for hidden bases. At first there was nothing, just silence, and the weight of water pressing down on them. But then, a flicker appeared on their monitors, a pulse of energy, weak but steady, rising from below the trenches. The crew looked confused. The signature was human, yet it was old, too old. It carried the mark of technology thought destroyed in the last Great War. Whispers filled the control rooms of the fleet. Why would a human signal still exist here? The admiral ordered his ships to move closer. The fleet drifted in formation, their shadows sliding over the surface like predators circling prey. When they reached the source, the ocean floor came into view through their scanners. There, half buried in stone and coral, was an object none of them recognized. It was not a simple beacon, not just a tool. It was a tower of metal, covered in scars, still burning with a faint blue light. The moment they saw it, a sharp tone echoed through every alien ship. The beacon had recognized them. The sound was not just noise. It was a voice, human voice, warped with age but clear, speaking through the water, through the static of the alien systems. "We knew you would. Come back," the voice said. The fleet went silent. For a second, every crew member felt a chill crawl through their scales. It was impossible. Humans should not have known, should not have been prepared. The admiral snarled and ordered the signal cut, but the voice repeated itself, stronger now, as if the ocean itself carried it. "We knew you would come back." The alien ships pulled away from the tower, wary. Some suggested destroying it, but the admiral shook his head. He wanted to understand. He wanted to know how humans had left this behind. He believed it was nothing but a trick, a leftover of the past. Yet deep inside, even he felt a shadow of doubt. The ocean was too still, too watchful, as though it was waiting for something. As the beacon pulsed, the water around it began to change. Tiny ripples spread outward, circling the fleet. The sensors picked up sudden movement, shapes darting in the darkness below. At first, the aliens thought it was wildlife sharks, schools of fish disturbed by their engines. But the shapes moved, in perfect patterns, too ordered for animals. Dozens of them, then hundreds, rising from the deep like swarms. The alien screens lit up with warnings, but before they could react, the human voice spoke one last time. The ocean remembers. The admiral tightened his claws around the edge of the console. He ordered the weapons charged. The fleet's cannons lit the sky, glowing brighter than the stars. Yet the feeling of unease would not leave them. Something ancient, something buried in these waters, had been awakened. The alien ships looked powerful, but the silence of the ocean pressed heavier than any weapon. It was as if the very sea hated them, as if it had waited centuries for this night, far away beyond the reach of their sensors. Hidden figures watched from the shadows of the abyss. Human eyes opened in the darkness, glowing faintly with reflected light. They had been waiting. They had been preparing. When the beacon spoke, they knew the moment had arrived. The return of the alien fleet was no surprise. It was a promise fulfilled. And as the first storm began to gather above the waves, the humans whispered among themselves in silence, ready to surface once more. The admiral stared out the viewing window, the ocean stretching endlessly around him. He could almost feel eyes watching him from below. The waves slapped harder against the hull, restless and sharp. For the first time in many years, he felt the edge of fear. Revenge was supposed to be his, but in the depths of Earth's waters, it felt like something else was waiting to rise, something human,